I hold most dear? What do I hold most dear? What do I hold most dear? I no longer have all the time in this world. Where will I go from here? 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 I no longer have all the time in this world. Where will I go from here? Where will I go from here? I no longer have all the time in this world. Where will I go from here?
We feel much better if we sunk this treasure and we laid our armor down. Now these precious metals, these captain's letters, are no use to us now. In the day we struggled with fatigue much greater than any offer was. We bow down and worship these bandits and cowboys, unable to hold their own guns. Now I know that soldiers are not paid to think, but something is making us sick. Onward and steady, able and young, in the valley of the low, low sun. In the shade we wander along a highway, shoulder out into the back of beyond, burning the daylight into a pastime that's too wise to come more than once. With boom, boom, thunder, ain't no sleep coming out, mining a slippery world of snow-covered beaches, junkyards of diesel, and bombers named after girls. On bridges of black ice not built for the rush, there's a new kind of beast getting up. Stranger the fiction, speaking in tongues in the valley of the low, low sun. Hold on for the slow turning, smoke if you got 'em, boys. This is bottom hiding out down under the stairs. Tomorrow has come like a drunk on the blood of men who haven't dared to be there. As it keeps on grinding its way up around the sun, as cool water crashes down on the masses, bootlegged and bottled like rum. My dreams are humble and lean as arrows, and streetwise ready and fair, as we bum rush the ages tied to the rails, and high seas not fit to be sailed. Whatever we've taken does feel like heaven. Oh baby, we just like hell. Now act like you mean it, where paradise was, in the valley of the low, low sun. Act like you mean it, where paradise was, in the valley of the low, low sun.
that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe how grand we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises. We are daughters of the universe, the sons of creation. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe. And the brothers of nations, we are girls that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe. And the wisdom we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe how grateful we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe how grateful we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
Smiling face, outstretched hand, through disputes, small and grand, we will lay down our guns. We are one. In the rage, through the war, we have shared pain before. In our grief, when it's done, Urimin Hana, Urimin Hana. When the earth touches sky, we are born, we all die. Where the clear waters run, Urimin Hana.
daughters and sons. Urinin hana, urinin hana, where the earth touches sky. We are born, we all die, where the clear waters run. Urinin hana, urinin hana, where the earth touches sky. We are born, we all die, where the clear waters run. Urinin hana, urinin hana.
Come gather round, people, wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept it that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone. For the times they are a-changing. Come writers and critics who prophesize with your pen, and keep your eyes wide, the chance won't come again. And don't speak too soon, for the wheel's still spin. And there's no telling who that it's naming, for the loser now will later to win. For the times they are a-changing. This is for you, Jamie. Come senators, congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorway, don't block out the hall. For he that gets hurt will be he that has stalled. There's a battle outside and it's raging. It'll soon shake your windows and rattle your walls. For the times they are a-changing.
Come mothers and fathers throughout the land, and don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly fading, so please get out of no one if you can't lend a hand. While the times they are a-changing.
The line is drawn, the curse is past. The slow one now will later be fast. The present now will later be past. The order is rapidly fading, and the first one now will later be last. For the times they are a-changing. For the times they are a-changing.
Talking left, talking right, talking far into the night, splitting hairs, splitting up, splitting off.
Less is more, rich and poor, what to address, what to ignore. What are we really fighting for?
Persuade, coerce,
Convene, disperse,
accept or curse,
deny, confess.
condemn or bless.
Who lives? Who dies?
My truth, your lies.
Bring in, shut out, what's that all about?
Who gives out retribution and grace?
What to keep, what to spend, what to give and what to lend.
Some have not, some have a lot. Can we learn to share the things we've got?
I see us fighting over what we believe, how to love and how to pray.
We begin with hope and resolve and dreams and end up fighting over what we believe. I see us fighting over what we believe, leaving spirits poor and lonely. I want to use my fighting spirit in a different way, instead of fighting over what we believe.
I want to wrestle with the angels till the light of dawn and struggle with my need for pride.
I want to take on my tendency to turn my head and grapple with why it feels so hard to gently lay our differences aside. We all believe in justice.
Let's talk about what that looks like.
And we believe in compassion.
Let's look at what that really means.
We believe in the holy work of listening to every voice. Let's start there.
Let's start there.
Let's start there. Bring in, bring out what that all about.
Who gives out retribution and grace?
What to keep, what to spend, what to give and what to lend. Who's my neighbor? Who's my friend?
Let's start our conversation there, instead of fighting over what we believe. It wears us down and wears us out. We have eyes to see, we have ears to hear, we have hands that long to give and receive. I see us fighting over what we believe, leaving spirits poor and lonely. I want to use my fighting spirit in a different way, instead of fighting over what we believe.
I'm tired of fighting over what we believe.
Don't want no more of fighting over what we believe.
Just say no to fighting over what we believe.
Nothing good can come from
Fighting over what we believe.
Divide you,
Fighting over what we believe. Fight over what we believe. Over what we believe. We all believe in justice.
Let's talk about what that looks like.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to virtual worship with the Unitarian Universal Church of Silver Spring. I am Preston Mears, today's worship associate. Our worship leader is our congregation's minister, the Reverend Kristen Grassel-Schmidt. Our children's portion of the service, A Time for All Ages, is being led by our spiritual growth director, Dr. Laura Solomon. 20 years ago yesterday, this country experienced attacks in New York City and the Pentagon that killed and injured thousands. Many of us remember where we were when those attacks occurred. Some among us are too young to remember that day, but the decisions of this nation's leaders in the aftermath have impacted this country and others for the last 2 decades. This morning, we remember those who have died. We lament the lasting harm of these wars, and we pray for healing and the courage to tell the truth about war. Whether this is your first time joining us for virtual worship or you're a long timer, I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching live, you can log into Google to participate in the chat in real time. This is a big part of how we connect with one another during these services. Comments are not available later for playback, but remember, during the service they are very public, so keep that in mind as you decide what to share. Also, the live chat has some safety features to prevent disruptive comments, so you won't be able to post special characters or complete web addresses. You can log into a special Zoom room if you would like to watch the service accompanied by an American Sign Language person. If you need help finding that link, please ask in the chat or email VSTechSupport@uucss.org. In a few minutes, everyone will be invited to light our flaming chalices. So now's a good time to go and get a chalice, candle, or even a flashlight so you can join in the kindling the flame of community. But first, let's say thank you to everyone who has contributed to today's service. Their names are on the slide. Please join me in the words on your screen as we light our chalices and reaffirm our congregational commitment. May this light warm our hearts with love and caring and guide us in the ways of truth. As we gather here for worship, we pledge ourselves to the endless search for truth, to the right of each to believe as mind, heart, and conscience dictate, to accept the responsibilities this freedom commands, and to implement our belief in the essential worth and dignity of every human being. May it be so. Now let us join together in singing the song of exaltation. The words will appear on your screen.
Since what we choose is what we are, and what we love we yet shall be. The goal may ever shine afar, the will to reach it makes us free.
Breath of life, spirit of love, We have gathered in the mystery of this hour to mourn those lost to violence 20 years ago, to lament the suffering that has followed every day since, to remember the true cost of war, and to hope for a future of peace and equity. In this service of memory and hope, draw near and call us back to the boundless love that holds us all, love for you and for me, love that isn't measured, love that keeps no record of wrongs. Draw near and call us out beyond all limits of our histories, of the things we allow to separate us one from another. Call us out maybe even beyond our own stories. Draw near and remind us of the story we share, one human people blessed with the gifts of one precious planet. Breath, spirit, love, draw near. Come, let us worship together.
Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near, draw near me, Spirit, draw near me, draw near me, Spirit, draw near me, draw near me, Spirit, draw near me, draw
Today we're reading a book called Old Turtle and the Broken Truth. This is a really beautiful story with beautiful pictures. It's written by Douglas Wood and has pictures by John Muth. I'll show you the pictures as we go along. Once, in a beautiful faraway land, there was somehow not so very far a land where every stone was a teacher and every breeze a language, where every lake was a mirror and every tree a ladder to the stars. Into this far and lovely land there fell a truth. It streaked down from the stars, trailing a tail as long as the sky. But as it fell, it broke. One of the pieces blazed off through the night sky, and the other fell to earth in a beautiful land. In the morning, Crow found the fallen piece. It seemed to be a sort of stone, shiny and pleasing to the eye. He picked it up. "This is a lovely truth," said Crow. "I will keep it." And he carried it away. But after he had held it for a while and examined it closely, Crow said, "This truth does not feel quite right. A part of it is missing. I will look for a whole one." He flew off and dropped it to the ground. Other creatures who liked shiny things soon noticed the truth as well. Fox, coyote, raccoon each picked it up and carried it a while. But they too found that it had rough edges and was difficult to carry. And its sparkle soon lost its appeal. "We do not need this broken truth," they said. "We will find a whole one." After a while, none of the creatures even noticed the broken truth anymore, and it lay on the ground, forgotten. Then a human being found it. He was walking slowly, listening to the breezes, gazing at beauties above and below and all around him when he found the broken truth. On it was writing, and the writing said, "You are loved." The man held it carefully, thinking it was the loveliest thing he had ever seen. He tucked the broken truth into a safe place and kept it. Sometimes he would take it out and admire it, and the truth sparkled just for him, and it whispered its message to him alone. And the man thought he had never felt so proud and so happy. The man took the wonderful truth to his people, those who lived with him, who spoke as he spoke and dressed as he dressed, and whose faces looked like his. And together they cherished their newfound truth and believed in it. They hugged it to themselves, and it became their most important possession. They called it the truth. The truth made people feel good and proud and strong. But soon they also began to feel fear and even anger towards those who were not like themselves and did not share their truth. The other beings and other people of the lovely land seemed less and less important, and the language of the breezes was hardly ever heard anymore. Time passed, and other people said, "We must have this great truth for ourselves, for with it comes happiness and power." Many battles were fought, and the broken truth was won and lost over and over again. But such was its power and beauty that no one ever doubted it, and when they were without it, they felt a great emptiness where their truth had been. The stones and trees suffered, the breezes and waters suffered, and the animals and the earth, but most of all, the people suffered. Finally, the animals went to Old Turtle, ancient and wise as the mountains and seas. "This truth the people quarrel over," they said. "We have all held it ourselves, and it's broken and does not work. Please tell the people." "I'm sorry," answered Old Turtle, "but the people will not listen. They are not yet ready." And the suffering continued. Until one day, a little girl came to find Old Turtle. The little girl thought she had never seen so far or seen so much beauty in this beautiful land. When she saw Old Turtle, she could hardly speak. She simply looked, her eyes full of wonder. "Why have you come so far to find me, little one?" "I wanted to ask you a question," answered the little girl. "Where I live, the earth is sore and people are suffering. Battles are fought over and over again, and people say it has always been this way and can never change. Can it change, Old Turtle?" Old Turtle spoke. "The world you describe is not the world that has always been." Then Old Turtle told her of how the people had found the broken truth and the suffering it had caused. "It is because it is so close to a great whole truth that it has such beauty and that the people love it so," said Old Turtle. It is the lost portion of the broken truth that the people need if the world is to be made whole again. But where is the missing piece? Asked the little girl. First, said Old Turtle, remember that there are many truths all around us and within us. We can no longer see some of these truths, no longer hear them if we are clutching that one truth. But maybe, little girl, maybe you can. And the little girl was home. It had been a very long journey, and those who take great journeys are changed. The people did not recognize her, and when she spoke, they did not understand. She told them of her journey, but the people could not follow her words. The people did not believe her and could not understand. Finally, Crow, seeing all that had happened, flew to that place high above the village where the great truth was kept, in a place where all could see it. Suddenly, the little girl knew what to do. She took Old Turtle's stone from her pocket and carefully added a missing piece to the old broken one. The fit was perfect. You are loved, it said, and so are they. The people looked and looked, some frowned, some smiled, some even laughed, and some cried, and they began to understand. And far away on a hill, in the very center of the world, Old Turtle smiled.
The end.
It's often said that a joy shared is a joy multiplied, and a sorrow shared is a sorrow divided. There's something generous in the act of sharing a joy and something healing in the act of sharing a sorrow. I invite everyone of all ages now into our time of sharing the highs and lows of our lives with one another. Grown-ups, this is a good time to ask the kids in your households if they have any joys and sorrows they'd like to share. In a moment, everyone will be invited to type joys and sorrows into the chat box during some music. Just remember, everything shared in the chat will be public during the live broadcast. The work of caring for one another is the privilege of this whole community, and every act of care and support strengthens the whole. Every single person can offer care to others, whether you've been part of this congregation for several decades or just a day. I encourage everyone to make a note of the people whose joys and sorrows touch your heart and reach out to them this week. It means so much to know that we are held in community. If there's something heavy on your heart or difficult in your life and you'd appreciate more support, please send an email to layministers@uucss.org, and either they or I will be in touch with you. And if you're watching this service later as a recording, I invite you to take a moment, perhaps pausing the video, so that you can meditate, reflect, or lift up your joys, sorrows, and those of the world in prayer. Let us now open our hearts to the joys and sorrows this gathered community of all ages has to share. A meditation by the Reverend Victoria Safford. Imagine this. On the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, every fall, every year, the people make their peace with anyone they have wronged or slighted or injured or in any way neglected in the last 12 months. The task is not to patch things up, smooth things over, reach a compromise, or sweep mistakes and uneasy memories under the rug. The task is not to feel better. The task is ownership. The goal is truth for its own redemptive sake. I did this. I said this to you, and it was wrong. I neglected this. I botched this. I betrayed you thusly. I demeaned you, whether you ever knew it or not. This is the truth in which both of us are living. I ask you to forgive me. Imagine how many deep breaths you'd need to take. Imagine how many doors you'd have to knock on, how many phone calls you'd have to make, how many letters, how many lunches and coffees, how many awkward moments with your children and your parents and with strangers, that cashier to whom you spoke so sharply. Awkward is irrelevant. The task is not about comfort. It is about truth, about wholeness and holiness, restoration. Imagine this. Someone has been preparing all year to speak with you, to write to you, to ask you a hard question. Perhaps in some way not quite conscious, you have even known this, and you have been preparing too. Finally, you answer the door or the phone or open the letter with shaky hands, and there it is, what you thought you'd been longing for but really have dreaded. Someone is asking your forgiveness. The task is not about comfort. It is about truth. Awkward is irrelevant. You get to choose now. You have to choose whether and how you will participate in restoration. Abandon the pleasant piety that claims knee-jerk forgiveness as the unquestioned moral course. You get to choose which way will be right in this case, between you as persons and with all your gods. What response will make the world more whole? Imagine. Something yearns in us to come round right. Something creaky, rusty, heavy, almost calcified within us tries, in spite of us and all our fears and self-deceptions, to turn and creak and turn again and come round a little truer. Something in us stretches towards conversion. Imagine healing, wholly from within.
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
I remember it like it was yesterday, my first few weeks at Western Maryland College, and one beautiful, clear blue morning. Eating breakfast in the cafeteria, a friend stopped by my table and said she'd seen a report on TV that a plane had flown into one of the Trade Center towers in New York City. I told her she'd probably been watching a movie by mistake. But when I went to my morning class, my professor, who was known never to be late, arrived late, wheeling a TV into the classroom. "Class is current events today," she said, and we watched as the second plane hit the second tower. Then, learning of the attack on the Pentagon, worrying about the people I knew who worked there, worrying for my father who worked in a hospital that would undoubtedly receive injured from that attack, unable to call home because phone calls in and out of DC were jammed. I remember it like it was yesterday. The pro-peace marches and petitions to try and convince Congress not to allow then President Bush to take us into war in Afghanistan and later Iraq. I remember the disbelief I felt when the country went to war anyway. I remember hearing classmates, people I'd grown up with, going off to war, some coming home with wounds, visible or invisible, some coming home in caskets. I remember seeing the veterans of these wars post on social media about how challenging it was to get treatment for their PTSD or the lung diseases they contracted from close proximity to garbage burning pits. I remember how little this country has done to care for these people who put their lives at risk to serve the nation's interests, how ignorable their struggle is for those who choose not to notice. I remember watching news reports of battles, lines drawn and redrawn, the reports of billions of dollars spent on long wars with no clear end goals, while students here in the United States went without needed supplies, families went without needed health care, unemployed people went without needed aid, and our rivers and forests and the air we breathe went without policy changes, all because it would have been too expensive. I remember when no weapons of mass destruction were found, debunking one of the most significant pieces of justification for these wars. And I remember no genuine apology for that. I remember watching the country celebrate the death of Osama bin Laden, and even that not be enough to end the fighting. I remember all of this and more, and I imagine many of you have your own memories and feelings of these last 20 years. I'm not entirely sure what to make of all of it, but I do know this. If we tell the story of 9/11 and the wars that came after in the same way this country tells so many of its other stories, the mistakes of the past will be repeated yet again. This country is not very good at admitting failure or defeat, and yet the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan has been anything but victorious. It is yet another example of a nation-building attempt gone wrong, with millions of peoples harmed, thanks to American hubris. The U.S. has a long history of rewriting history to avoid acknowledging when we've failed or done wrong. Many white people in the South still haven't gotten over the fact that the Confederacy lost the Civil War, still haven't faced the brutal reality that their ancestors enslaved and abused other human beings. And these didn't even happen in living memory. School children around the country are still being taught that dropping the atomic bomb was tragic but necessary to bring World War II to an end. And that happened nearly 80 years ago. These stories are still being told in these ways. There is this idea that we can't admit as a country that we did wrong, that we made mistakes, that we failed, that we harmed, without dishonoring the people who suffered and died on our behalf. In truth, we honor them and ourselves by finding the courage to tell the truth. In truth, we honor them and ourselves by fighting to make sure veterans get the care they need for the rest of their lives. We honor them by telling the truth about this country, even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable or awkward or not politically advantageous. We honor them by remembering that though the U.S. has withdrawn from Afghanistan, this country and many others will continue to be affected by what happens there. Our world is interconnected. We cannot begin to heal as a country until what is injured, what is unwell, what is sick, is brought out into the light of truth, exposed and treated. That goes for the whole and honest truth of this country's past of slavery and settler colonialism. It goes for the wages of capitalism. It goes for the true cost of war. It's as true for nations as it is for people. We can learn from our mistakes, but only when we acknowledge that they were mistakes. As Reverend Safford in our reading writes, the task is not to sweep mistakes and uneasy memories under the rug. The task is not to feel better. The task is ownership. The goal is truth for its own redemptive sake. We get to choose now, she writes. We have to choose whether and how we will participate in restoration. We get to choose which way will be right in this case, between us as persons and with all our gods. What response will make the world more whole? Imagine, she finishes, something yearns in us to come round right, something creaky, rusty, heavy, almost calcified within us, tries, in spite of us and all our fears and self-deceptions, to turn and creak and turn again and come round a little truer. Imagine healing, wholly, from within. May it be so. And may we make it so for each of us, for this country, and for our world. Amen. I invite you to join me in a space of feeling and honesty, a place of prayerful reckoning as we lift up stones and ashes of the past 20 years. Please join us in reading responsively the litany shown on your screen. For vibrant lives suddenly, shamelessly sacrificed, we lift up our loss.
For the lives that continue haunted by the pain of absence,
we lift up the ashes of our remorse.
For the images forever seared into our memories,
we lift up the ashes of our pain. For the charred visions of peace and the dry taste of fear, we lift up the ashes of our grief.
For all that has been destroyed in the fire of anger,
we lift up the ashes of our disillusionment.
For deaths justified by arrogant patriotism or fanatic faith,
we lift up the ashes of our shame. As we cast these ashes into the troubled waters of our times, O Spirit among us, beyond us, and within us, hear our plea. By your power, may these ashes make fertile the soil of our future, and by your mercy, May these ashes nourish the seeds of loving kindness.
For the ways humanity pursues violence, not understanding.
We lift up the stones of our anger.
For ethnic, religious, and national boundaries to our compassion.
We lift up the stones of our fear. For the ways we cast blame and create enemies. We lift up the stones of our self-righteousness.
Dissolving the ashes of our grief and the hardness of our hearts.
O cleansing waters, wash us all toward justice and peace. Amen.
I invite you now into our congregation's practice of generosity. The act of giving is so important in our community that we have made it a part of our worship together. Some of us are able to make large gifts and others small, but every gift matters. And the act of giving is what counts the most. Because no matter how much is or isn't in our piggy bank or bank account, each and every one of us has something precious to offer to UUCSS and the world around us. There are 3 ways you can make a financial gift to the congregation. The first way is to make your gift is through an app on your phone. UUCSS has used Banco's Give Plus mobile app. And many of you probably have downloaded it on your phone or tablet. Banco has made a new and improved giving app, and soon the Give Plus mobile app we've been using will stop working. So if you prefer to make your offerings and other financial gifts to the congregation through the app, please download the new one. It's called the Banco Mobile Faith Engagement. The rest of the instructions for how to use the app to give to UUCSS are on the screen. The second way to make your financial gift is by using your phone to text a message to 833-880-1363. And if using the app or texting don't work for you, the third is to mail in a check directly to the church. All of the information you need for all 3 of these methods is on your screen now and will appear again toward the end of today's service. The offering will now be given and received with gratitude.
I've been waiting on a war since I was young. Since I was a little child with a toy gun. Never really wanted to be number 1. Just wanted to love everyone. Is there more to this than that? Is there more to this than that? Is there more to this than that? was young. Since I was a little child with a toy gun, I've been waiting on a war since I was young. Since I was a little child with a toy gun, I've been waiting on a war since I was young. Since I was a little child with a toy gun, I've been waiting on a war since I was young. There's too many of you. Since I was a little child with a toy gun, and I said, hey, there's too more to this than that. There's more to this than that. And I said, there's too more to this than that. Is there more to this than that? Is there more to this than, more to this than, more to this than just wait on the road?
May the gifts we have given fuel the flame of our commitment, empower us to serve out our mission, and give the life we share the shape of truth, love, and justice.
Our church is not only the organization that puts together these services, we are a vibrant community of volunteers and staff, a member of the Unitarian Universalist Association, and a part of the global UU denomination. Today, we have an announcement about our town hall following the service by our board president, Maggie Hayes.
I'm Maggie Hayes, pronouns she and her, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. As we head into the fall, Reverend Kristen and her staff, the board, and many other lay leaders are working on plans to return to worship in our beloved sanctuary, to welcome our children to RE classes outdoors, and to organize other in-person gatherings that are both meaningful and safe for our community. We'd like your input on how we should go about this. What are your hopes and concerns for this church year? Would you like to learn more about our brand new COVID guidelines? That's why we're hosting a town hall meeting this morning, beginning soon after the end of this service. Just click on the usual coffee hour link to join what promises to be an informative and stimulating dialogue. See you soon.
This is my song. on everywhere as good as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
Please join me in the words of chalice extinguishing. Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again.
Breath of life, spirit of love, send us out, infused with the boundless love that holds us all. Send us out beyond the limits of our histories, beyond the things we allow to separate us, beyond maybe even our own stories. Send us out to write together the next chapter of the most important story we share. One human people, blessed with the gifts of one precious planet. Our worship has ended, and now our service begins.
One, two, three, and.
Sometimes I lay under the moon and thank God I'm breathing. Then I pray, don't take me soon, 'cause I am here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds, I know someday it'll all turn around, because all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more wars, and our children will play. One day, one day, one day, oh, one day, one day, one day. It's not about win or lose, 'cause we all lose when they feed on the souls of the innocent. Blood-drenched pavement, keep on moving though the waters stay raging. And in this maze, you can lose your way, your way. It might drive you crazy, but don't let it phase you away. No way. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds, I know someday it'll all turn around, because all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more wars, and our children will play.